Well, hello, good evening. We're going to play a little bit of Civilization and we're going to hop right into it. So how is everybody doing today? Now, if you all remember, we found out we're on an island and we're kind of playing our own version of Castaway right now. Let's continue. We're working on shelter building right now. We are starting to get a lot more wild animals spawning. And some of them are actually pretty significant when it comes to dangers. Got another Bengal tagger. Go with more lush. Our scouts aren't even hunting units, but they're doing a fairly decent job at staying alive and getting some little bit of influx of food into our capital. Got a sun bear, some horses. The taggers are definitely an issue. I'm not actually sure if you leave these guys alone if they're going to get stronger over time or not. I know at one point they'll start spawning things where even our upgraded scouts aren't going to do much. At least our nomads. We're doing a decent job at producing tools. Folklore of the Viper is always useful. And our city expanded a little bit, so now we got a little bit of positive growth, it looks like, possibly coming in.
A home is not a mere transient shelter. Its essence lies in the personalities of the people who live in it.
And a childbirthing hut, so we're starting to get some decent units. Well, not units, but buildings for the prehistoric era. You can definitely see some sort of coastline. Still don't know if this is just more islands or if it is the proper coast. Being that this is a freshwater sea of some sort. It's It's way too big to be a lake, so it's definitely a sea. There definitely has to be the mainland coast.
At your service.
Looks like they're doing some gatherers. Now we will have to go into this menu every so often. Find where the automated scout section is. It's here somewhere. There it is, automations. And basically we want to make sure that it is turned off when it comes to fortresses. So anything that is a fortress. Otherwise, they're just going to turn our entire civilization's open land into just fortresses. And this isn't 40k, so we're not turning everything into just one giant fortification. Should do. Now usually in the beginning of a civilization game you would be spamming out your scouts and stuff, but in Caveman to Cosmos you spend the good first portion of the game just doing hunting and gathering, which is basically what we're doing right now. Just sitting back, relaxing. We are now officially growing, so that is quite nice. We'll eventually start getting some more population. have them build a gatherer after all this.
Yes?
Yeah, the Bengal just took out our scout.
Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception.
And a couple of security buildings, which are important to law enforcement, because if we get a very high crime rate, we'll start getting things basically like criminal units spawn. You can get, like in the later game, guerrilla units and stuff like that. That Bengal Tiger is definitely a threat. Another thing of lush and continue hunting. About all you can really do on an island now. We're definitely at a disadvantage for the moment, being that we can't explore the greater portion of the map until we get some sort of raft. Which, I mean, we are trying to make a best line to basically get ourselves some sort of raft. How far are we away from... What's up there at the... there it is. Still 29 turns away. What if we just make a more beeline? 18. Let's pick up trails. Assistant hunting. Hard hammers. Then maybe a beeline to raft making. And then we'll go back and start. It's like we need certain things. Still at 21. Just gonna pick this stuff up here. It's gonna have to wait. As much as I would like to make a run for the composite tools, stone tools, tracking. Fifth. Fire. Stone tools, stone buildings. Work our way to fishing. Heat treatment, slash and burn. Obsidian weapons, animism. Pick up the religious stuff. Nocturnalism. Chieftain. And when we pick up Chieftain, we'll really decide on this last little portion of this part of the tech tree, because this is where we really need to decide like what route we want to go in before we actually get to this main part. Like, we'll probably know before then, but we might want to end up going for like mega structures, like megalith construction pretty quickly. We might want dogs fairly quickly. This just kind of depends. I think this is probably the most efficient that we can get with the tech tree for now. We can always revise it later. Though we are at the bottom of the thing for advance. Well, that's something that is very beneficial. Now, these scavenging camps have a random chance of just spawning in a unit, and we got elephants. That is really useful, actually. That's going to be like one of our heavy-duty hittings in the very early stages of warfare. Okay. Gatherer.
One who walks in another's tracks leaves no footprints.
Tell me what to do.
We're going to bring them back and upgrade them to a proper scout.
Reporting for duty.
These trails.
Ready for action.
Alright, now we have the next level of Scout, which is just the Scout.
Your orders.
Heal them up. And they've lost the hunt ability, but that'll be fine. They can just go around and explore, see what happens. Now this gatherer will start producing trails. When we get more space around our territory, we'll be able to move a little quicker.
When you smoke the herb, it reveals you to yourself.
Now we have
Plan.
herbalism. Take the herb. Hmm. Doesn't look like we've had any Neanderthals spawn around us, though. That's nice. Send them working around. Now we want to build ourselves our watchers. About 6 of them usually does the trick to keep the crime rate down.
If you ever catch on fire, try to avoid seeing yourself in the mirror, because I bet that's what really throws you into a panic.
Now we could try, and I think we will. We can't hurry anything. But we'll see if we can capture fire first.
Every kind of peaceful cooperation among men is primarily based on mutual trust, and only secondarily on institutions such as courts of justice and police.
There we go. Now we can do communal, but I'm going to wait for oral tradition. We now have captured fire. I'm really happy that we got the random event with the elephant. It's just now made this perfect, so we can at least later on when we try to go and expand past the island, if we have to do it basically hostile-wise, we can use elephants.
Here, we tell the story. Why the people came here. What they did when they got here. Going back to the Native Americans. And coming all the way forward.
I hit the wrong button. I wanted to do all of this in one go. Now these early forms of government, basically these little prehistory things, you can do it almost as much time as you want. We have to wait another turn. But as we get more and more complicated forms of government, it will take more and more to deal with. Now we can get some folklores going on. And we're gonna bring this down just a bit. I think this will do quite fine. Let us catch up on some buildings. I also want a couple wise women. They're our first basic healthcare units. We definitely want to have some nice healthcare, being that we're in the jungle. We're definitely producing a lot quicker, being that we got some elephants.
Ready for action.
This is a scavenger camp. Do I have a...
Tell me what to do.
Yeah, we need to destroy the seed gatherer. Again, we're still just speeding along through our turns. And our first official golden age has ended. Though, it didn't really do a lot. Just lets us spit out some buildings a little quicker. Let's see if a storyteller will do anything for us right now. Our borders are about to expand.
I am a futurist. But ironically, my two daughters tell me my taste in music is positively prehistoric.
Michikaku. Let's see. This is alright. Well, hey, it's DJ. Haven't seen you in a while, man. Oh, I've been alright. Had a pretty big move and just some recent life things, and now I'm trying to rebuild everything back to streaming-wise. Get back into multi-variety. Right now we're playing Civilization, as you can see. And we're also doing our best imitation of the movie Castaway, as we're stuck on an island all by ourselves. It won't be long, just wait. I'll be sitting here soon, start, you know, babbling to myself and be like, "Well said! Well said!" Well, hey, take your shoes off, sit back, relax. We'll still be here for a little while. Yeah, now with that little bump that we did earlier, bust out some technology real quick. Now we're the most powerful, even though we don't really have much of anything. You know, most powerful is huge finger quotes right now, being that the most powerful weapon known to man is a stick. The great and powerful stick. Actually, it'd be a rock. I mean, getting hit on the head with a rock would really hurt. Oh yeah, Millennia will be pretty interesting. I'm always going to prefer Caveman to Cosmos just simply because of all the stuff that's pushed into this mod. Being a history lover. But all the alternate stuff that you can go and do, well, you can kind of do it in this mod too, but it's just a question of one looks prettier. Well, we're working on those folklores. When we get those folklores, they're definitely going to a creation myth. They're definitely going to give us a lot more fun. We got some Bengal taggers, and that's always nice to have in your backyard. Yeah, I can see it now. What happened to Ted? Well, the tagger got him. Luckily, the animals aren't going to enter our borders. They only spawn within your borders through events.
Life isn't about how to survive the storm, but how to dance
It's in
in the rain.
Don't like Taylor Swift, but hey, that's a pretty awesome quote in my opinion. When we have a cultural identity, then we're going to start seeing ourselves as an actual group of people. Because right now we're just a tribe that's really held together by just mutual cooperation. So we can still see this today. You get enough groups of people together, they start forming small tribes. Well, I wouldn't call them tribes, but you know, you got a small town at one point, and then that small town eventually goes around and forms, in the case of like the US, you would have a county, which is just multiple small towns. You might have an actual like city in it. Just goes and depends, but after you get like multiple counties, then you would have an area, and that whole area will start having a basically similarity between one another, but something a little bit further away might have a little bit of a difference. And that's how you start having more cultures start to come about. And when you leave a group of people isolated, like say by mountains, one side of the mountain is going to eventually become different than the other side. They're going to have different values based off of different circumstances that they had. And in some cases, they're going to even start speaking different languages. But when a group of people mostly come from one place, you're going to start having a more uniformed language. But you'll have certain dialects, etc., that come across. Like whenever we were playing, oh, which one was it? I think it's whenever we were doing the Nordic playthrough, where we had Duo come on, and we were basically just sitting there and talking about the different influence that the Norse had on the English language. Oh, I could have turned that off quick enough, sorry about that. Oh yeah, it's definitely a fun game. Keeps you on your toes, too. The demo was definitely fun.
A nation's culture resides in the hearts
We got a
and in the
cultural
soul of its
identity.
people.
But as I was saying, you know, with countries like the United Kingdom, in particularly England, the north of England and the south of England talk very differently to one another. If the moderator Twit was in here, he'd be able to go and tell you about that. But it's the same way, like whenever you go to Germany, the States, Japan, no matter where you are. Oh yeah. So it's like, you know, and a lot of that happens to be from the Vikings, in the case of the United Kingdom. Hey, you're not too far from Twit. So it's kind of the same thing that will be going on here as we expand around this island, being that outside of these two very suspicious peaks and the slight hills, it's not really enough that, unless we have outside influences, this whole area would basically be a pretty uniformed for, like, whatever language that we end up speaking. Cultural differences will be relatively minimal. Though luckily civilization doesn't actually replicate that too well when it comes to cultural drift, but good enough. Makes a nice talking point. Let's see, couple gatherers. Yeah, EU5, we know it's been in development for a little bit, but it looks like we're probably going to be actually seeing it soon. So I believe that they've stated that there's like maybe 1-2 more DLCs for it before they're pretty well done with the cycle altogether.
Tell me what to do. At your service. Ready for action.
Let's see if our brute can beat up a cobra. He has 0 success chance. Amazing.
Yes?
Well, that cobra sounded an awful lot like something that wasn't. Oh yeah, and it'll be a lot more in line with CK3. So whenever you do like if you wanted to do a mega campaign, it would move up a lot better. Oh cool, we can get ourselves a fire dance, but we don't have the stuff for the other dances yet. Now we're in a very large freshwater sea, which is very nice, and it looks like this is the actual proper coastline, or at least another big island maybe. But I'm willing to guess that this is the coastline, so we're kind of like surrounded. Probably not far off in the distance. Just looking at what I can see, that's my guess. A start date before... That would just definitely throw it into the... I mean, it would have a lot more overlap. Because right now, CK3... the medieval era... Like, when you go into the Middle Ages, there's a heavy debate on when the Renaissance begins, which basically you're supposed to be starting in the Renaissance when it comes to um, the Europa Universalis. Or you're starting to get like right into there. It's like right in that little area. And it would kind of be a lot better to have CK3 end right where the other one would start, so you just have that seamless, like, oh hey, you know, January 1st, 1453, that's whenever you move into the other one, or 1454, and then start and go through. But right now, and this is one thing that Europa currently does that I don't like, is the Renaissance was starting to get going in the late phases of the medieval era, of the Middle Ages, and was fully kicked into the Age of Discovery, or basically the Age of Enlightenment, which is the whole area that the Renaissance goes up to, basically up until the Industrial Era starts. And some people even include that into the Age of Enlightenment. Or it can be classified as its own thing. In this case, we're going to classify it as it's basically our own thing, and that's very, very easy because the major industrial revolution is you have the first one, and then you have the second one, and the second one is the major one that you want to like focus on, and that's the Victorian era. Like, it's a very clear right around that time frame. Basically right after the Napoleonic Wars. So, in between Napoleon and going all the way back to roughly when Constantinople falls, you have the Age of Enlightenment. You got the Renaissance, Age of Discovery, all of that goes into it. It's just a real question on when do you count the Age of Discovery. Oh, you can link whatever you want, or you can just send it to me one way or another. I'll look at it after this, as I get ready to go to sleep. But it really comes down to just the absolute main question of when do you want to start.
The way to become rich is to put all your eggs in one basket, and then watch that basket.
The Age of Discovery. And there's two really heavy-duty philosophies when it comes down to it. Do you mark the death of Rome once and for all as the huge changer of like all the old ways, like the old empires and stuff are completely gone at that point? And are we now in a completely new era? Out of the Middle Ages, you know, what's left of old classical is starting to come back. Or do you start it whenever we start seeing the waning of major institutions across the world? So in the 1500s, you start, basically in the early 1500s, you start seeing the waning of the Catholic Church. You have the Protestant Reformation getting ready to get kicked off. For example, in Asia, you have the remnants of the different Mongol states are basically on full-on decline and retreat. The Mongols have been kicked out of China. Yuan dynasty is gone. And China is re-emergent, and the dynasty that kicked out the Mongols is starting to fall apart. And eventually the events that would lead to yeah, dynamic. That definitely sounds nice. But for like China and otherwise, you have the major events that will lead the rise to the Great Qing. in the New World, you have full-on the age of colonization starting to go off. You have both of the Americas full-on being colonized by the Europeans. Africa is just mostly skidding around the coastline, but there's some nasty things going on, but you also have some major movements going through. But it's a major thing of change. Hey, welcome. DK Chris. Nice name. Oh, we're stuck on a little island. Gonna start making a little ball right now. Well said! Well said! Oh. One thing that irks me is we're just surrounded by jungle. Like, it's gonna happen. If we don't manage to start burning some of this, we're gonna start getting some diseases. Oh yeah, disease. If you crank the diseases all the way up in CK3, they just absolutely wipe the map. Like even the most minor plague can just wipe everything out, and when the Black Death comes, just everybody dies.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Oh yeah, this is the Caveman the Cosmos mod. We, basically, Caveman the Cosmos starts back at one of the earliest points in times for human, human evolution in general. Not human evolution, but, just the evidence of modern man. Yeah, there's mammoths. Unfortunately, we're in the tropical area. The mammoths will eventually go extinct unless we manage to catch some, but we're not going to be doing that in this game because we're stuck on an island. All by our lonesome selves. Unless Neanderthals start showing up, and then we'll have a fun time because they'll have nobody else to bother.
Awaiting your orders.
We need to take out that viper. So, in the game that I had of CK3, had everything turned up, my little area was completely left alone by one of the major diseases, but it moved into England and just wrecked the entire population there. Threw it into a huge amount of civil war, and then I was able to go in, due to the whole legend system, and get a claim on the throne of England. And took advantage of the whole disease problem. And boom, became king. I mean, they got over the fact that I was French really quick, because they all died. Death is a very persuasive argument. Eventually we'll get tribalism and we can start putting out some more minor tribes. So I mentioned this in the last episode, but we'll kind of go over for anybody who on YouTube didn't bother watching the other episode, and some of the new viewers on Twitch. So Caveman the Cosmos is a very, very large mod for Civilization 4. It basically changes the entire base game and puts you clear back in prehistory, roughly around the time that the earliest evidence for man in Africa comes along. Now, at the point where we are right now, we're almost 100,000 years into the game, and you know, about a little over 300 turns. And all we've managed to do is watch one of our scouts get horribly devoured by wild animals. Good times. Though I did like that we had a random event that spawned our elephants. It's going to be so useful. We are surrounded by a very large freshwater sea. Most likely this is the coastline. I'm hoping it's just not more islands, but it does look like the coastline. There is rabbits over there, so watch out. I've watched Multi-Python. These things are dangerous. That rabbit's got a vicious streak a mile wide. Look at all the bones.
Having discovered this skill, I vow to make it work for the tribe. You can consider this promise binding.
Now that we have binding, we can actually do something better than just lob a stone at somebody. We can lob a stone at some good force. If you've ever used a slingshot to go hunting before, or ever been walloped by a small child slingshot, you know those things hurt. And for the longest of time, the slingshot was a staple of warfare, clear up until the early Middle Ages, when it finally sort of phased out, once and for all. So it stayed around for a very long time.
At your service.
So by this point, Homo sapiens, and I'll get to something actually pretty funny when it comes to the naming convention, going into my actual day-to-day life when it comes to that part, but we'll get to that in a minute. So one thing that is pretty interesting around this time frame is whenever we start noticing the shift between early man and modern man. So early man, there is some differences in our skulls. And by this point, our jaw structure and the back of the skull is basically identical on how it goes, and our wrist has basically come to how it is today. Something that early man couldn't do is take your thumb and touch each tip of your finger, and your early ancestors were not capable of doing that. The hand today is a lot more flexible. You can flip it around, turn it around, do a really good range of motion, twisting. Basically, your hands are a lot more flexible and workable today. And like I was saying beforehand, and this is something that was true for early man, but we can actually do it a lot higher today, because you can basically bring your arm clear over up to the other side. But just raise your hand up like you would at school, and boom, you can do something that Denisovans and Neanderthals were incapable of doing. take a deep breath and hold it. Boom, you can do something that Denisovans and, well, Denisovans could do it a little bit better, but Neanderthals were completely incapable of doing it. That regulated breathing that you do whenever you go out on a morning run, whenever you're just doing your normal work. Just that, the slow breath. Something that's really unique to modern Homo sapiens. And when it comes to modern man, the whole naming convention, Homo sapiens, being that Neanderthals are now basically pretty hard in the same genus as us right now, like proper, like they are in the genus Sapien. So now we have the fun thing where it goes Homo sapien Neanderthalis, and then you have Homo sapien sapien. Yep. So now we have a very redundant name. We are Homo sapien sapiens. Oh. I can see the comments now. Mommy, he's teaching me things. We're talking about science. So for anybody who is new to the channel and just haven't been really around for a while or just wonders how everything goes, one thing I like to do whenever we're going through and playing outside of, trying to do some storytelling and stuff like that, I also like to go into like the actual history and things like that. And all forms of discussion are perfectly welcome. As long as it's history related, it doesn't matter how controversial it was. If it was history, it happened, it happened. Bad things happened in history, and trying to hide it, deny it, and sugarcoat it doesn't do anybody any benefits. It's one of those things that life is harsh. We learn from the past to better improve tomorrow.
The secret to a successful hunt is this. Make sure your prey gives up before you do.
That's actually a pretty fun quote right there. But no, persistent hunting. So the whole technique of persistent hunting is basically you just run something to death. You find a deer, you scare it, it runs off, you just give chase to it, it sits down, eventually try to rest, and then here come those pesky humans that scared it a few minutes ago, and it takes off again, doesn't get caught, tries to lay down, and oh no, here come those pesky humans again. Being that we can more regulate our breathing than other animals can, and our adrenaline system is a little bit different, where we can just basically keep on a-going, keep on a-going. We're not the fastest things around and otherwise, but we can sure trot. Because here's one thing that I want you all to sit there and think. Like, unless you have, like, some sort of an injury or something like that, like, if you're in what we would refer to as just normal health, like, if you're older, imagine back whenever you were in your 20s. If you're, younger, just imagine how you're full of energy right now. How often can you just kind of go at, not quite a fast walk, but kind of not at a run, like that little in-between little area? It's like, how long can you keep that up? You can keep that up for a good while. And you just keep doing that over and over and over, and you're eventually going to catch up to whatever you were chasing. And it's just going to get tired again, and again, and again, until eventually it just drops dead. And that's what persistent hunting is. And this is still used in Africa and other areas where there's a lot of open space and it's not like heavily developed. Some more tribal base that keep like that old traditional lifestyle going. Like they still do that. They'll just run it. They'll run it for miles. Alrighty, now we can get ourselves some harems, some hunting instructions. Get the population moving up. I think after we do that, let's try to get some clubmen and see if we can take out that cobra. Cobra!
When elephant steps on a trap,
No more trap.
no more trap.
African proverb. And the borders of our city is about to expand more, and boom. There we go. Soon we'll be able to get our hunters, we'll get our traps. I am going to completely take out our research budget and have that solid 6 go into our treasury. And like I said, right now our treasury is completely worthless to us, but getting it as much as possible for whenever it actually does become worth to us, because I have gone from the point where like the number was all the way over here and dropped it all the way down to nothing real fast. Caveman of the Cosmos can be really brutal sometimes. Right now, not so much. I mean, the worst thing that we have is a freaking tagger to deal with. And potentially a couple of volcanic eruptions. Because these can pop into volcanoes if they happen to be volcanoes. I won't be able to tell if those are volcanoes until I get volcanism, and that's way off in the future.
The ground was stone, but I ground it, and it not stone no more.
So, grinding stones, or just ground stones, are some of the earliest heavy-duty confirmed purpose-made tools that you can find. Yeah, you can find little sharp pieces of rock, little bits of bone, but like heavily purpose-made where you could tell what it was actually being done with. Because whenever you take a rock and you actually sit there and you grind it with something, it becomes very smooth. And that is very unnatural in the way that it looks. So you can start bringing that in there. So now we're getting to the point where archaeology is actually going to be able to see our evidence outside of like our trash that we've been producing, the bodies that we've been producing from the different generations. Like, we're starting to get a lot more noticeable. Let's go deal with that. There we go. Purpose-made clubs. We find a lot of those. Like, you can tell that it's more than just a stick that somebody picked up, because usually they have something around where you would grip it with your hands. So basically there'd be some wrappings around where you would place your hands. You can see where somebody had been holding and using it multiple times, and it's a hefty duty stick and it might be wrapped around. And later on, like, there's a certain point where it gets to, like, little things are stuck into it, usually bones, or in the case in, what's it called? I think it's out of the Euphis site. Down in Tanzania, there is actual shark teeth embedded into the club, where they were using it to start whacking animals. People are really crafty at making ways of ending something else. Now, as we're nearing 100,000 BC, we are getting to something that is fairly interesting. Africa, by this point, to the exception of a little area where basically it was underwater at the time, because the Sahara was really green. So basically people were around it. There was Lake Giga Chad, which was just Lake Chad but a lot bigger. And yes, it's an actual term. It's not like a whole joke and otherwise, but yeah, there is basically Lake Chad whenever it was fully expanded. And we find evidence of people being around these lakes. Might have been some sort of permanent structures that were around that would have been seasonal, as they would come in and out, in and out, in and out. But what's really interesting, as this is probably around the time when the first major groups of people start leaving Africa and going into the Middle East and going across, at the time, the still closed the crossings of the Strait of Gibraltar. So you might have the very first entryways of modern man into Spain. And since the Gibraltar was closed off at the time, the Mediterranean was slowly drying out, and there wasn't like really enough water going into it to keep it filled up to the way that it was. So you had a lot more things going down into the dry Mediterranean Sea. And we still get evidence of this, just like over in Dogger Bank. We still get evidence of people being down in there. There were probably tribal communities that were starting to form up. And most importantly, the stuff that we hunted was also going down in there. Probably the main reason why we even went down in there. Okay, let's see if we can beat down this tagger. Probably not. Yeah, guys with clubs are not doing well. This guy might win. There we go. Only took quite a few, but we managed to get him.
Your orders.
Didn't capture him. That would have been so much better, but hey. At least we took out that tagger that was staying by our borders. Let's give it versus animals. There would have been Neanderthals spawning. They should have been spawning by now. So they're most likely on the mainland. And if we can keep this scout alive until I can start producing boats of some sort. We're not the wealthiest civilization, which that's actually saying something. I'm just gonna keep them doing their thing. Yeah, if they build something there, that'll definitely work the wheat. When we get agriculture, we're gonna see an explosion in population, especially any cities we have up here in the north that will be working these.
Ritual will always mean throwing away something, destroying our corn or wine upon the altar of our gods.
So we're going to pick up folklore. That increases our birth rate. It's the main reason why we would want to do this right now. And we no longer have basically the non-state religion. And also, here's something that's really interesting. If you ever wanted to download Caveman to Cosmos and just sit here and read, they do a lot of text basically telling you about each and every little thing. Let's go communal. We already had oral tradition. We are borderless because we are alone on an island and we don't have the technology. And Wilson is just floating away. Wilson! Let's take a look at the tech and see what we have. Don't have really any reason to change around our current situation, though we could technically probably make a little different down here. Still 17 away from raft building, but we're fine on that. Alrighty, now we have wheat. And we are getting caught up on our project buildings. We're going to get up to, we're just past 100,000 BC. So we're going to get up to 400 turns, and then I am going to call it for the night. I might stream again in the morning. Well, it's already morning, as you can see, it's 12 a.m. Now we can start giving our scouts the ability to better defend themselves against animals and animal attacks. And 400 turns, so now we are to 90,600 BC. And we're starting to actually gather up some stuff. We got our own little borders are going quite nice. The island is starting to develop quite nice. This hasn't exploded. This hasn't exploded. We didn't die horribly. Just ignore the Bengal attack that happened. I think we had a nice discussion. If you liked what you saw, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and hop over here to Twitch if you want to see any of these live as they happen. And for everybody here on Twitch, I thank you for coming by and stopping by. DJ, it was good to see you again, and welcome to the community there, Chris, and we will be seeing you all later. Alligators. Bye-bye.